Ali and Sameer, thank you so much for joining us today. Really looking forward to this chat. Like in the introduction, I shared that you guys have this fantastic law firm which is doing such great things in the industry, and I'm so personally inspired by it.
Guys, what you're trying to do is very different in the industry, starting with the name to then being very, very young lawyers to start their own group of, lawyers to start their firm together. Uh, how difficult was that in the industry? Because generally, आपको पाकिस्तान में law firms में नजर आता है, there's a senior partner who has had a certain years of experience behind them, and then they have associates working for them. So how did you get into this and decide that nahi, we're not going to keep anybody who has had that kind of experience with them and start from scratch?
No, I think the other sort of point of agreement between the four of us back in the day was that we wanted to break away from the traditional Pakistani India law firm model or a law practice model where you have a grand advocate who's practiced for 30-40 years and then bare bones team of, let's say, 2-3 associates at the most working with that grand associate. So, I mean, there was no element of growth in that model. And even if you look at the Indian market now, it's changed drastically over the last 20 years. Some of the firms in India now are 300 to 400 lawyer firms. Right. So, I think it's just the natural sort of evolution of things that it had to reach this point at some point in time.
I'd like to understand from Sameer also. So, Sameer, when you were joining this firm, there were already a few lawyers that were a part of, this process, that they were already doing this. What was your thought process? Why did you want to be a part of a younger, more different kind of a team setup?
Yeah, so I think that also it's similar. My answer to this is similar to the answer to your previous question as well, which was what's I think the issue with the old model, and I think what people. So it's actually quite common in the old model for young, talented lawyers after a certain point in time, after having learned what they can learn from their kind of seniors, to then set up their own shop, right? Either one or in pairs of two, etc. And the reason they do that is because there is very little independent growth in that model, because that firm is recognized by that senior practitioner. In the market, they come from that senior practitioner. So even if the senior practitioner is very, very good and very good about it, there's something structurally that impairs that, because people who come to that firm always want or come to that firm for that senior practitioner, right? Yeah. And that's what you're trying to roll back from, to say that actually what you want to do is people should come to the firm for the firm, and the firm should be able to direct those people to the people who are most adequately, or the resources in the firm that are best placed to help them. And there's lots of times where, even the same client has been serviced by 2 or 3 different partners in the firm based on the type of work that they have in a particular thing. And that doesn't take place in that old model. So when we started talking, that was my imperative, to say that, look, young people always feel this imperative to say, look, we need to move away to grow further in the profession. And what we want to try and do is, why should young people not have a roof that's broad enough to accommodate them all so that they can grow together? And I think that's the journey that we're kind of discovering even right now. We're 6 years old. It's not a very long time for a law firm to be old, right? So we're still kind of figuring that out, but it still aligns us together to try and make that happen.
So from what I understand, you guys are trying to bring some kind of a structure into the industry also, which is the legal industry. Abhi tak aapki jo badi bhi law firms nahi hai, were they running on a similar sort of setup that you guys are trying to achieve? How structured or unstructured is your industry as a whole?
I think it's fairly unstructured. So we have 3-4 big old firms who've been around for 3-4 decades. Yeah. And those are also primarily, in fact, I think all of them are sort of family-oriented law firms, in the sense that the firm had a senior partner, then the son sort of joined the firm, and then the son took over, and those are primarily Karachi-based law firms who've expanded now nationally across the country. So those, I would say, the old one, some of the old big firms are well organized, even though they have that sort of family ownership dimension. Um, Otherwise, if you look around, if you consider some of the litigators sort of law firms, those again are quite unstructured in the sense that you will have one or two senior people, and then on a rotation basis you'll have junior associates assist the senior people. And so again, that's that grand advocate model.
Okay, so you guys, I think, tried to recently build some HR systems into your firm also, and structure that process, the end of your, people-related side also in some way or the other. Why did you decide to do that is something I've always wondered.
So, and I think here is where we're very grateful to Full Circle Consulting. It's been over 2 years since we deployed our HR policy and other protocols. It was, I think, in September 2018 that we, with your great assistance, launched that whole initiative. And I think in 2018, having been around for about 4 years, we were 7 partners at that point in time, another 25 associates, so a team of like 33 lawyers, other staff, 40, 45 people in the firm. It was just the right point to seek sort of professional help and to have an expert come in and take a look at the way we were doing things.
Did you feel anything was missing in your structure? Like, what did you want to do with it?
I mean, I don't think anything was missing. If it was the right time for it, because we're about a firm of multiple partners with a team that works with multiple partners. Usually, in a one-person setup, the entire team is working with one person, right? So, if from multiple partners working with one team that works with multiple partners, it's reporting lines can become more complicated. And so the idea was that, look, if we have to stop here, if we're going to stop the firm at, let's say, 30, 40 people, then maybe you could manage. But if the idea is that we're going to have a growth trajectory and have that mind towards it, then we need to start thinking about putting in these processes that can accommodate the growth of the firm, because at some point in time, this is going to start to hinder you in being able to grow, right? So in that sense, it was important for us to say, look, what are the processes that we can put in place right now? And even if we don't succeed 100% in putting them in place right now, to start thinking along those lines and to build them and have a structure around our thought process, so that we can then, it can aid rather than be clash with the growth of the firm as well. So I think it was very important for us.
And I think while doing this also, what was interesting for me was to discover that there are so many streams within the industry also, like so many different areas of practice, and how people need to get trained on all of them, yet develop some speciality, and how to groom them within those roles also is very interesting. If you do it in an ad hoc way, some people may miss out on a chance to really learn and grow in a certain area where they may be very talented and might be able to learn from that. So that's great. You guys also implemented performance management systems and some sort of a succession planning technique where you will have a successor for each role. Have you been using that? And if so, what have been the advantages for it for you guys so far?
Yeah, so in the 2 years since we deployed tailor-made sort of strategy for ourselves, we've recently promoted 2 partners who were, prior to that, they were senior associates in the firm.
Right.
And, those promotions were based on performance first and foremost. And so we're very happy, and we're, very proud to have taken this sort of next step in the firm's evolution, to rather than have someone come in laterally this is a clear step in our evolution that basically tells people in the firm that look, if you meet certain performance goals, if you are great at what you do, then this is the sort of firm where we will not hesitate to promote you to a partner.
No, that's fantastic because that also gives the employees an indication that, we are using the systems and it will work in your favor if, these are used well.
Yeah. The other area where it's also really helped us is identifying gaps, right? So when you promote people, you have to identify, you have an idea of where your organization is and what roles you have. It helps you to identify where the gaps are now. And so that's something that, when we are going on our recruitment kind of drive, or when we're looking to hire people, we have a much clearer idea, even though so we end up meeting a lot of very talented people, right? And sometimes there's a great imperative to say, look, everybody who's talented can come in, and that's great and that's fantastic. But sometimes the role that you have is not going to align with their interests, and you're setting up yourself up for a bad match, right? So that's an area where that's really helped us to have a great sense of our own organization and where the gaps are, and to be able to match the skill sets that we need, in, let's say, the next year or 2 years, and what kind of people we need for those things, and to have conversations with the people in the firm about potential areas for growth and potential gaps that need to be filled, and if they're interested, and to get a different kind of experience. That's without moving elsewhere.
So another area I think of HR is training and people related processes, how you train them to grow them. How are you working on that in your firm? How do you work with people to really develop them? I know there are no formal, not as such very formal training programs available for lawyers. So how do you work on that?
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because the immediate answer is on the job training, right?
Yeah,
so I
of
think,
course, and I think that's the most impactful also. But you guys are a lot of people working with
yes.
Shared resources. So how do you go about it?
So I think that in that sense, for young people starting out with us, or younger than us starting out with us, they get an opportunity to work with multiple different partners who do different kinds of work. So in whereas in a different place they would get one kind of experience, they get a broad set of experience just working with the different partners in the firm as well. But as far as formal training is concerned, I think that's something that mostly happens with just working directly with partners. We don't have a lot of training sessions, but what we try to do is we always try to have people who are leaders in their field. So the kind of thing that having a conversation with you in terms of HR, so we will have people in leaders in their field come and speak to our team, because we think that there's an interdisciplinary kind of focus and emphasis in people who have a great. So there's that speaker series that we have, and then what we try to do is what we want to do ideally. I think it's okay to kind of talk about what where we want to go, but training is definitely one of the areas where we think that more mock in-house argument exercises or those kind of things, or training material for people who kind of join the firm, to have ready-made kind of templates and training material. Those are things that we are working on. Those are works in progress that we want to do in terms of more formal things. Right now, it's mostly, when you get to work directly with seniors.
No, I think the stuff that you're talking about is definitely more impactful also than classroom-based training sessions, because, most of your employee base, from what I understand, is under 40. And they're younger people, they have a different way of learning, they use technology in a different way, they engage with people in a different way than, a lot of other people who are more senior to them. So how does that work in your thought process as a company, as a firm, to groom those people, to train those people, the hiring, har cheez mein you have to think differently when you're thinking about that age bracket?
I don't think we sort of view things from an age perspective necessarily. And going back to training, continuing legal education, CLE is a part of many legal systems. And unfortunately, we don't have many, sort of regular seminars or other senior people organizing such initiative seminars to then, count as credit towards your sort of continuing legal education. Right. But we are, the firm is a knowledge sort of based firm. We're very particular about sort of keeping up with sort of the latest developments in the law, case law especially, and we have these periodic reading sessions in which we sort of interpret sort of judgments, we read sort of a new case law together. And that in itself, I think, is a very useful way to teach young people in the firm how to sort of approach a case, and how to sort of read the law, as it were.
So another thing related to just new hirings and stuff, and just how the industry may be changing, is that compensation structures used to be very different in the industry before. I know lawyers weren't expected to make so much from day one. It was a learning based profession as opposed to expecting a sort of remuneration from day one. But how has the industry changed? What is the new compensation practice within the industry?
I mean, for many in the industry, nothing has changed, because again, you will find old established law firms who keep a first year associate fresh out of law school, and they're quite sort of transparent about it. They say that we can't pay you anything for the first 3 months. I mean, in this day and age, for that to happen is, I mean, we still find that quite problematic and strange. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old profession, and again, there are many old sort of firms who have that policy towards compensation initially. So what we have here is again something that's more structured. We have a scale for people joining us fresh out of law school, the first year associates, and I think some of the other compensation aspects Sameer can maybe address better, because we have a flexible sort of compensation system that's also based on one's sort of real input on a particular assignment and the revenue that comes through that particular client.
Right. So Sameer, can you add a bit more to this?
Yeah, I mean, so the one thing that I will say is that even today, and even our firm, I think that the industry is and should be considered a learning-based industry. Because I think the way our law schools are structured, especially the domestic law schools are structured, when you step into the profession, there is a very steep learning curve. So while we, do set you off and handle you, give you live material to deal with, our own input into that assignment obviously varies depending on who's dealing with it. Even today, I think a person who starts out in the law firm has a lot to learn, and there's a very, very steep learning curve and steep learning gradient. And I keep telling fresh graduates this, that I mean, I think it's important, obviously, that there should not be any unpaid labor. But the thing that's going to set you up for success in the future is not really, is what's going to set you apart and set you up for success is the breadth and the depth and the quality of experience that you get, let's say, in the first 3 or 4 years before you do your master's and you come back. Because that's really where you set yourself up to be a successful or not successful lawyer. And that's where the focus should be. So while I agree, I think so I don't think that, law firms or legal industries even today, while we would like, we've done away with some of this, months on end without any unpaid stuff. I don't think, many law firms will be able to compete with multinational organizations or banks or those kind of things in terms of salary structure. What we have is to recognize, this idea. We've kind of modified and kind of come up with our own solution, which is that there is a salary, there's a base salary, of course, that you have. But then you have a reward-based system for people who are working in the firm on key assignments, etc. And to recognize the fact that we're one team, it's not all the reward doesn't go to one person who's worked on one key assignment. Because if you're working on a key assignment, then other people are working on other things that allow you to work on that key assignment, right? So there's a kind of a system in place to kind of have a shared bonus or reward kind of pool, where people who worked on key assignments get rewarded individually, while the collective also gets rewarded. So, I mean, it's something that we worked out on our own, basically looking at how things
just
work.
a question that stems from this for me is that why did you decide to do this? You say that the industry hasn't changed so much, but is there an expectation or a push from the younger talent that's coming in?
Well, yes, there is. Absolutely. I think there is. But I also think that where the industry was just not sustainable. You can't legitimately expect, I think, people to have gone off to college and gotten a law degree and work for 6, 8, 9 months without any expectation of even a stipend, right? Because they are, no matter how much they learn, they are doing some kind of work for you. So I think it needed to move away from that model, definitely. And so there's an element of kind of fairness to it that is attached to it that we ourselves feel. But yes, there is also, I think, there is a push from younger people to say, look, why does it have to be this way? And I think that's it's partly in reaction to it. Part of it is good. I mean, I think people should kind of talk and discuss about, it doesn't always have to be the way it's been.
Another thing that I want to understand from you guys, it's been 6 years now, you guys started your own firm together, Access, and you have a long way to go also. But as the senior most people within the firm, how do you keep yourself current and keep yourself on trend and keep learning and growing in the profession?
Yeah, so I mean, through different means, I mean, all of us, I think we're all quite interested in what's going on globally, not only in Pakistan, but as far as, law practice is concerned in the United States and the United Kingdom and some of the other sort of common law countries. We're always interested in, how a firm dealt with a particular issue, especially with this whole new COVID-19 situation and, the stresses on every business, including law firms. So we've been sort of following that very closely.
Right.
For,
I think, and I just want to add, yeah. So I think it also helps that, when you are in a situation where the people you're working with are intellectually always stimulating you, so it's a very intellectually stimulating environment, then, often we'd end up talking about current developments, and the sources of inputs into the firm are so broad that it really helps in staying current and staying on trend. Ali has a different set of interests. I have a different set of interests. We're working on different things. But, we'll bring that together into the firm and we'll kind of be curious about what each other is doing. And that really helps. I think if we were on our own, we would find it a lot tougher to stay on top of the things that we, currently, let's say, are able to do it, because we've got more people who do it or who are engaged in their different spheres.
Like you mentioned COVID and how that's impacting the industry globally, all industries in fact, but services more so, I think. How are you guys dealing with it? What do you see as the future of law firms in Pakistan with this crisis emerging and unfolding?
I mean, I think there's no denying that the impact is widespread. It is deep, and one has to take sort of contingency measures. So we've thought a lot about it, and it's quite uncertain how long this will last. But I think, again, going back to having sort of policies in place and being able to sort of discuss things openly amongst the senior sort of people and senior people apart from partners. So we've begun this dialogue within the firm of what will happen if this sort of persists and continues. So we are sort of constantly thinking about it. I think we will be placing a lot of emphasis on remain prepared and having the ability to be flexible. So I think there's no denying that every firm out there will have to sort of look at things a bit differently.
Sure. Given that your industry is very face-based industry, it's very in-person, everything, it's not very technologically savvy, this industry as a whole, your court systems, even client management, all of that, you think that's going to play a factor in how you guys work?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that in a weird way, I think that when an industry has a lot of inertia in terms of adoption of technology, these kind of disruptions actually work to compel people to adopt technology, which they would otherwise have not adopted because things were just going along as they were supposed to go along, right? So this actually creates a set of incentives for people to say, okay, no, I mean, I still need to have client meetings and I still need to have these things. How can I do it? So people who would otherwise, for example, not use Zoom are now using Zoom in our firm, right? Or not just in our firm, across the industry. And video meetings and the concept of video hearings, which was all really, I mean, on the fringe of in the Pakistani law practice. There are actual discussions happening. Even now, I think people are waiting to see, look, if the lockdown is going to end in about 2 weeks. Right now, the emphasis is on maybe, having a hearing 2 weeks from now. But if we're looking at a situation where this persists for months on end, at some point in time, people are going to have to find ways to service that work without doing that. And I think that in that way, this is going to serve as an impetus for people to adopt technology. But in the meanwhile, it is going to cause disruption. I think for firms that are willing to adopt technology and for practitioners who are willing to adopt technology and kind of, are ahead of the curve there, they'll find it easier to do that, because I think actually clients are a lot savvier with technology than law firms are. So they'll actually be far ahead of you. So they'll find you easier to deal with if you already have, if you're comfortable with the situation that they're proposing.
Fantastic. I think this has been really a learning experience for all of us. The very few law firms who are as impressive and structured as you guys, and really I hope you guys keep developing and growing from here on further, and good luck with this entire crisis. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for your help. And I mean, it is a constant learning process for us. So we're all, excited to see where it goes
Yeah,
and how it turns out.
absolutely. Great. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Sameer, for your time.